Hey, Rube.
Hey, Dave.
How we doing?
Doing well.
I'm doing well. Also, we're live here at Rivers Casino, Philadelphia, out by the Sportsbook. This is the Eagle Eye Podcast presented by Nissan Reuben Frank, Dave Zangaro.
Can we describe the sportsbook chairs before we go any farther?
Nice, I'd say.
They're like the comfiest looking chairs. It's like flying first class. Back in the old days when flying first class was really, they look pretty. I don't know if I'd be able to stay awake if I lean back. They're kind of reclining.
They look nice. It's the problem. I don't know, you're not a movie guy, but like movie theaters now have these nice, comfy seats. I'll tell you what, I sit down in a nice, comfy seat in a dark room for 2 hours. I'm probably falling asleep.
Yeah, well, it might be worth the price. Go take a nap and get some popcorn. I don't care
bad.
what the movie is.
Yeah, that's true. Could you turn that off, please? All right, we have a lot to talk about today. We're still kind of sifting through the Eagles' big loss on Sunday to the 49ers, 42-19. It was ugly. Today we got a chance to talk to the Eagles coordinators, Sean Desai, Michael Clay, Brian Johnson, in that order. So we'll kind of regurgitate some of their comments, read between the lines, and kind of figure out where we think this team is going into a really important matchup down in Dallas this weekend.
Can you use a better word than regurgitate? Assimilate? I don't know, not assimilate, but just break down. I don't know. But yeah, Michael Clay, last year it was the opposite. Like Michael Clay would come out, the other two guys were flying high and, top offense, top defense. Michael Clay would come out like, yeah, we were terrible again. And the roles have reversed.
They have, for sure. And it really started with Desai today. His defense was awful in that game. They got off the field really quickly on the first two drives, 3 and outs. And I think everyone in the stadium's thinking, oh, wow, this could be a blowout for the Eagles. Yeah. And then after that, it was obviously a disaster. 6 straight touchdowns. The first 5 of them were on drives of 75-plus yards. Let's kind of start off with the broad scale of this thing. How concerned are you about this defense?
I am. I'm very concerned, honestly. And it's not just the secondary. It's not just the linebackers. It's really the whole unit. And I mean, they haven't played well for a while. Really, since the Miami game was the last time they really shut a team down. They've had some good moments since then. Look, they're 4-1 in their last 5 games, so I don't want to paint it as a complete disaster. But they're not making plays. Teams are throwing up and down the field on them, and it is a concern. And the concern to me is that they're trending the wrong way. You want to be playing your best at the end of the year, and they're not. They're playing their worst. Over the last 5 weeks, they're the worst defense in the league statistically. So that is, look, they face some great offenses as well, and that's a part of it. But Sean Desai didn't run from it. He just kept kind of repeating the same thing. Got to put these guys in better positions. It's on me. I got to make better calls. He must have said that 20 times.
Yeah, the only meaty part of those answers was that he talked about answers and getting to them quicker in this game. And honestly, for the most part, I think he's done an okay job of that this year. I think they have been able to kind of counteract what offenses are trying to do to them. But, I mean, this game, he talked about getting the answers faster. I just don't think they had any.
Yeah, and that was my sense too. And you're right. I mean, when you look at, the job they did in the second half of the Chiefs and Cowboy, or the Chiefs and Bills games, they shut those teams down. They shut down some really good offenses in the second half. So I think they have done a really good job of that. But I just think the 49ers offensively are on just a different level. I just think they just have more talent than the Eagles' defensive players can account for.
Yeah, I think talent is probably the bigger issue in that game. But I also kind of agree with Desai's point that Shanahan was able to scheme his players not just open, but with space. Like getting a guy like Christian McCaffrey in space or Deebo Samuel in space is a big part of this. And then, the Eagles miss a tackle and then there's no one to clean it up. But that's the real issue. You're trying to rally to the football. And part of that, as Desai mentioned, is him schematically making sure that there are bodies in the area when a catch happens. And Shanahan, to his credit, does an excellent job of making sure that he finds his guys with space around. And we saw the yards after catch in that game. It was out of this world for San Francisco.
And then he's got a quarterback who's really an extension of him and the way he thinks. You don't see a lot of, look, Jalen and Nick, Jalen and Brian Johnson or Shane Steichen, they good relationship, and I think Jalen really has a good understanding what they want. But just get the sense Purdy is like Purdy and Shanahan are like the Borg. I don't know if you watch Star Trek, but the Borg. It's like one single mind with two people or two Borgs.
Look at you with a pop culture reference. I mean, an old pop culture reference.
It was Next Generation.
Okay.
The Borg was in the Next Generation, but that's still pretty old, I guess.
Yeah.
It's just not, it's not 60s. It's more like 80s.
I didn't take you for a Star Trek guy.
Yeah, I was a big Star Trek fan. Yeah, Trouble Tribbles, all that stuff.
I wouldn't have guessed that.
Yeah. Yeah, I could go Star Trek trivia pretty much with anyone.
Okay.
Yeah. But I kind of lost them after there was a bunch of other series, but I like the movies. I don't go to a lot of movies, but I did watch all the Star Trek movies.
I didn't know this about you.
Yeah.
My sister was a Star Trek fan, and I made fun of her for it quite a bit.
How's your relationship now? And what am I in for here?
I have enough ammo on you already. I don't need the Star Trek.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, but anyway, I Shanahan and Purdy's just so smart, able to find those matchups that Shanahan creates, and he knows where they're going to be. Gets rid of the ball quick and puts it in the right place. It's a tough combination. They're going to be tough to beat.
Yeah. And look, we talked about on the emergency podcast, if you guys haven't seen that one, we put out
asked.
Yeah, we delivered. There was an emergency podcast after they signed Shaq Leonard, and so much of that was focused on the linebacker position, which I think is fair. That's definitely a team that puts stress on your linebackers, and the Eagles haven't done a great job of putting resources or hitting on the resources they have put into that position. But I think it's almost too dismissive to pin it all on the linebackers in that game, because that would be not an easy fix, but at least you know where to start. I think there were other issues in this game. I think the secondary certainly hasn't been as good. I think schematically there are things Desai can do to help them. I mean, how many times did we see, I go back to after the 2 3-and-outs, the Eagles get a good punt. They have 49ers backed up. They get them in a second and long, and Slay's playing like crazy off coverage, and they pick up yards. They get him a third and manageable, and they move the sticks, and all of a sudden the game kind of changes. So just to say it's on the linebackers is a little too short-sighted. There are other issues. I think on the defensive line, they came out so strong and they were dictating the game early, and then that kind of dried up. And if that dries up, I don't know if they have the talent on the back end to make up for it.
I think you just talked for like 4 minutes and basically said everything about. Yeah, I mean
that'll do it for this.
Thanks for watching. We'll see after the game. No, I totally agree, and I think it's wrong to take the D line off the hook. Look, they're really talented. They've all played well this year, but Hassan had that early sack. I think it was on their second pass play. Mm-hmm. I think, and then there was one other sack. It was Fletcher's 2-yard sack later in the game. Look, this is the strength of this defense is up front, and they got gashed on the ground. Look, McCaffrey does that to everyone. I get that, but they were the number one run defense in the league not too long ago. They're not anymore, but I thought the breakdowns were every level. I thought the D-line, linebackers, coaching, secondary, corner, safety, you name it. And I think we touched on this after the game, but I'd be hard pressed to say anybody played well
on defense. Yeah. I mean, Bradbury did get thrown at, so you could say he played well. Yeah,
he actually did.
Yeah.
But there wasn't as far as playmaking.
Yeah, and look, Purdy did a good job protecting the football. There was really one chance for a pick, and Reed Blankenship couldn't come up with it.
Yeah,
but even if he did, I don't think that changes the game.
No, I don't think so either. And he's had a couple. And look, I think he's played really well this year. And I think he's the one guy that you keep him around here as long as you can. But he's had a couple that he's dropped.
Yeah, tackling was an issue in that game, and it wasn't like they had a ton more missed tackles than a normal game. It was just the missed tackles they had ended up being huge plays, and it was glaring in this one. And when they missed tackles, like I mentioned earlier, there was no one there to clean it up.
Well, and they also have players who you don't have that margin of error, like, and this defense for the most part I thought has been really good this year about swarming to the ball and getting numbers to the ball. But when you have a guy like Kittle or a guy like even Ayuk or McCaffrey, any of those guys, Debo obviously, if you miss that one tackle, you're just giving them so much life, and they're not going to. It's just not going to be enough. And some teams, you miss a tackle, the next guy's going to make the tackle, maybe 4 yards down the field. There was no 4 yards down the field. And every one of those missed tackles, it seemed like turned into a touchdown or a big play.
No, definitely right. It was funny. They had that one tunnel screen, the Debo, and it's teach tape. It's perfect. And then you see the Eagles try to run some of those receiver screens, and you're like, doesn't quite look the same.
Yeah. Yeah, that was striking.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what happens there. I think Shaq Leonard will help, but they're bringing in all these new pieces. I don't think Byard has been as good as they would have hoped. I think Roby's been okay.
I think Byard, you probably. I mean, yeah, I think they've both been okay. Mm-hmm. But I mean, Byard's, you expect a little more from him too.
Mm-hmm. And he's an every down player.
Yeah,
he doesn't leave the field.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe Roby shouldn't, but he is. I thought it was a rough game for Eli Ricks.
Yeah, and he's had a few of those.
Yeah, he only had 5. That was one of the things when I looked through the snap counts that was kind of glaring. He had 5 snaps, and I'm thinking, did he get picked on every play? And just about, he gave up 3 catches.
Yeah. And you worry about a young guy who, look, he's an undrafted rookie. Probably ideally he shouldn't be in that position. Like all those guys, whether it's Mekhi Gardner or all these practice squad type guys. You give them credit for doing the work and earning the reps, but you just hope that doesn't shake their confidence, doesn't do any kind of, lasting damage to their confidence, and that they can come back and because look, Eli Ricks could be in 2 years could be a starting corner for this team. You would kind of hope that somebody takes ownership of that. Bradbury and Slay aren't going to be here much longer. So whether it's Job or Ricks, Isaiah Rodgers, where are those guys going to come from? Ricks has good size. He's got length. We've seen some flashes early from him, but I just worry about those guys playing too much and kind of hurting their confidence.
Nick Sirianni is so into situational football. It matters more than everything. Eagles defense, they are now the worst third down defense in the NFL, giving up conversions on 47.3% of third downs, and they're 4th worst in the red zone.
What's their third down?
47.3.
47.2. So it was actually the highest. That might be the highest ever.
It's not good. And another concern there is that they're obviously every team. It's not just the Eagles. Their goal is to get you in 3rd and long. Because that's especially for this team, because you have the pass rush, you think, to get home. They haven't been good in those situations. We really saw that against the Bills, but that wasn't a total outlier. When you're talking 3rd and 7+, they're still toward the bottom of the league. So it's not a given that they're getting off the field in these 3rd and long situations, which that in a way is more concerning, because everything that they do is supposed to get you into those spots. And then if you're not getting off the field on them, then you have to kind of rethink it a little bit.
I also think there's a mental, when you have you get a team at the 3rd and 8, you're feeling pretty good. We're going to get off the field. And if you give that up, I think there's a mental letdown that's hard to avoid, giving up a 3rd and long. Now, you think you're going to the sideline, you're going to get some rest. Offense is going to come out. You feel like you've done your job. All of a sudden they get 13 yards. Yeah. The highest previous, they've only kept 3rd down stats, it looks like, since 91. 47.3 is by far the highest. And it's not over a full season, but the highest ever has been 42.9. So they're way over that. And that one of those was 2021, Nick's first year, this coaching staff's first year, obviously different D coordinator. The other time was 2015. It was the end of the chip. A lot of things go back to 2015. It was a bad year for Bill Davis. Not really his fault, but that's a really high number.
The 2 worst 3rd down defense in the league, Eagles and Cardinals.
Interesting. Well, the Eagles were pretty good under Gannon last year. They were.
Do you think Sean Desai's getting a bit of a pass right now?
Yeah. Gannon had number 2 defense in the league.
Sure. And look, we talked about the talent this year was not going to be as good. So like we prefaced all of this in the offseason by saying there's a very good chance this defense is not as good as it was last year, and that won't necessarily be indicative of the job the defensive coordinator is doing. And I still think that's true, but I think you would have hoped this defense would be a little bit better.
Yeah, and then the number 1 pass. Look, it's different. I mean, half that group is gone. CJ, GJ, TJ Edwards, Hargrave. I mean, they lost a lot of really good players. But to go from, I mean, they were the number 1 defense until like the last play of the year. Gave up a 15-yard scramble to a backup quarterback. I can't remember, and that cost them the number 1 ranking. But to go from that to what are they now? 21st, 22nd overall. That 47.2 is also one of the 20 worst ever on record over the last 30 years. But yeah, I do, and I like Sean. I think a lot of his personality. Gannon was very off-putting. I got along with him, but I could see why.
Well, you get along with everyone.
I do, yeah. Well, yeah, I know you're being sarcastic, but who do I not get along with?
You want me to do that on the podcast?
Well, people I don't like. I just don't really interact with them. So it's not like I don't get along with them. I just ignore them.
Okay.
Well, I guess there's a couple.
Yeah.
But anyway, I do think he's getting a little bit of a pass because he's not Gannon. And not to say Gannon was perfect. He wasn't. And not to say Sean. I mean, I think Sean's a good coach. I don't think he has the personnel to really be a great coach right now. But I do think there's a little disconnect there.
Yeah, but I will say that I saw some things from Desai earlier this year that were in stark contrast to what I saw from Gannon in some areas and that I wanted to see more of from Gannon. So, like, I thought earlier in the year, Desai was willing to try some different things. I know I'm speaking in broad strokes here, but I always thought Gannon was kind of rigid with his scheme, whereas Desai has been willing to change things.
Got to a Super Bowl with a rigid scheme, though.
And then lost it
to the best quarterback.
Okay.
And the best. So, yeah, I mean.
But with obviously better talent.
He wasn't perfect, and I'll be the first to say that. But I think Jonathan Gannon's a good defensive coach. I think Sean is too, and we'll see how it goes. But I do think there's a little disconnect in the way the two are perceived.
Yeah, well, it's not even about like Desai versus Gannon. Like, you can really look at it this year, like Desai and Brian Johnson, who's kind of become everyone's favorite, want to fire the coach. And I think Brian Johnson hasn't been perfect, but I kind of feel like Sean Desai is skating by quite a bit. And there are reasons for that, and some of them legitimate, some not. Like, I think offensively they have more talent than they do defensively. That's the way they built this. So when the offense doesn't perform, it signals something a little bit more.
I'd like to know who the last first-year coordinator was who fans didn't want to fire. Because they wanted to fire Reich, and they wanted to fire Jim Schwartz in 16. They wanted to fire Steichen in 21. And Gannon. They wanted to fire both of them. I mean, who's the last? I mean, it's you're talking about first year guys in this job, and it's not going to be perfect. And they look. I don't know.
If we're talking about like the size skating by, I think Nick skates by a little bit too. So much of the ire drawn from fans has been toward Brian Johnson when it's Nick's offense.
It's Nick's offense, yeah. It's hard to really tell exactly, when you have an offensive head coach and, exactly who to blame, who to credit. But, yeah. Look, they're 10-2, so you can't lose sight of that.
Yeah, no, that's very true. They're 10-2. They're still the top team in the NFC for now. We'll
NFL,
see.
Yeah.
See, yeah. Which doesn't matter as much. The NFC really matters.
Yeah.
Brian Johnson, we talked to him a little bit on Tuesday. What stood out most?
Well, I mean, he was as strong as we've heard him talking about having to commit to the run. Now, he echoed what the head coach said yesterday, so it's not all that surprising. But there seems to be a kind of consistent thread through the two of them that they feel like they really need to get the running game going. And I asked Brian about, like, there's been a bunch of games where, like, DeAndre Swift will be 3 carries for 7 yards in his first, in the first quarter, and then he just won't be a factor again. And at least from what Brian said, he's like, you got to keep pounding it, and the next one could be a 30-yarder, that kind of stuff. So we'll see. I'm not really confident anything's going to really change. I think Brian just has a tendency to get away from the run if it doesn't hit right away. I don't think that makes him unique, but I mean, most coaches, whatever's working, you're gonna stick with it. But we've seen that from Swift, where he'll be, like you see it with Saquon. Like he's like the ultimate guy where he'll be like 9 for 13 and then he'll run for 70 yards. Like, you got to just keep with it sometimes when you have a really talented back, and they haven't done that.
And the Eagles have a much better offensive line than Saquon gets to run behind. So it is a weapon. It was curious. I thought the Eagles' offensive line did a really good job in pass protection. I did not think they were as good in the run game on the limited chances they got. I think there are some things they have to clean up there, but that should be I still think that is the strength of this team, is that offensive line. And we talk about complementary football so much. There were some moments in that 49ers game where the defense felt like, they're getting off the field to get a drink of water and take a breather, and all of a sudden they're back out there again.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just got to pick up first downs and help your defense out a little bit. Curious to see what Dallas Goedert adds in that run game. I know everyone's kind of focusing on his ability as a pass catcher, but he's kind of the X factor in that run game. He's a big +1.
Yeah, and we kind of said that about Cam, and he came back, and then they were okay for a couple of weeks, and then it just kind of fizzled out last week. I think the 49ers, their defense is really good. They're very fast. They're physical. I thought they kind of out-physical the Eagles.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, I thought they did.
Which is something that no team ever wants to hear.
Yeah, and that doesn't really happen. Now, I think part of the reason for that could be, you played a road Monday night game, then you played 1,000 snaps and went overtime the following Sunday. And this is your third game in, 12 and a half days. And
the 49ers had extra rest.
They had extra rest. I really think that was a big part of what we saw.
One of the injustices of the schedule really is that the 49ers come off extra rest, and now the Cowboys come off extra rest against the Eagles.
And the Eagles it seems like the schedule makers haven't done the Eagles a lot of favors in recent years. There's always, look, it's not a conspiracy theory. I don't think they're out there saying, how can we get this team? But, there's been instances like that, and that's a lot to overcome. It's just such a physical game. We're 3 months into the season. These guys have played a lot of snaps. I just think, and then when it started getting away from them, it just snowballed. And you have guys going.
The 49ers are very good at front running. Like, if they get a lead on you, that's where they kind of thrive.
Yeah, they really do.
Not that any team isn't better up, but it seems like they're built to really do that.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a good win for them. I'm not convinced if the two teams met again that the Niners would be a lock to beat them. If the Eagles, look, a lot's going to depend on if there's a bye involved and who gets the number 1 seed. So that's just going to be.
If it's a championship game, where is it?
Yeah, it's going to be huge. Well, if they play in the championship game, assuming one of them got the bye, then the game has to be in that stadium.
Yeah,
but yeah, you're right. It's gonna. I think that's a huge. But the Niners came in here and won, and Eagles are a pretty good road team. I wouldn't count them out if they did have to play in Santa Clara. If the other things were even as far as rest and snap counts and all that.
That's the one road city I have not covered a game in.
Really?
Mm-hmm. It's the only one.
Santa Clara or San Francisco?
San Francisco in general, yeah.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because they played them in the COVID year out there, I think.
Yeah. There was a stretch where we were out there a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the only road location I have not covered a game.
Oh. Interesting. Well, it's a great city, and I probably covered. I'm gonna look up how many games I covered while you speak. But it never works out that way. But if I go to the all-time history section, then all-time results, right? Is that what we do here? I love it out there. I usually stay up in Marin County and get up to wine country. I'll fly out Friday, take Saturday, get out to wine country, go hiking in the redwoods. You would love that. You're a big hiking guy. You a big wine guy?
I'll drink it.
It's one of my favorite places. All right, so let's see.
One of my favorite bits here has become you telling me to talk and then getting mad at me for not talking when you haven't stopped.
92 was my first time out there, and then 94 was when they won in overtime. Or 93, I should say. At the end of 93. 94 was the 40-8 game where Steve Young got into a shouting match with, was it Mariucci? Wasn't Walsh. And then they didn't lose another game. Eagles crushed them. Eagles weren't going anywhere. And they might not have won another game, and the Niners didn't lose another game. So we were out there for the playoff game in 96, 14-0. In the rain, the Niners beat them. Mark Rippon finished that game at quarterback. 01, we were out there. 02, 06, 08, 2010, 2014. And then, so 2014 is the last time. So I've covered 9 games out in San Francisco. Yeah, I really like it. One of my favorite, I almost said one of my favorite countries.
Okay.
One of my favorite cities. And just the whole area. You go down to Half Moon Bay is beautiful. But everything north of the city is just spectacular. Highly recommended. I'm surprised you haven't been there because.
Well, I've been there. I just haven't covered a game there.
Oh, okay. So you've been there for not for.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll shut up then.
I found it interesting what Brian Johnson said about Jalen Hurts in this game, because the time to throw was great, and the offensive line was really good in pass protection. Lane Johnson, especially, with a really tough assignment against Nick Bosa, but it didn't seem to yield much downfield. And he talked about making sure they get to their scramble drill, which now that the film is out, I do want to take another run through and see what the heck was happening on that back end. I haven't had a chance to do that yet because I think the 49ers did cover well, but if you have 4 seconds, like, someone should be getting open.
Yeah, it was weird in that. It was a weird game in that aspect because Jalen's been better at getting rid of the ball fast. And I think when he was really hurt, and you saw him really focusing on just delivering the ball, staying out of harm's way. But he didn't do that. He didn't do that Sunday. And like, his numbers were fine, and I don't think he played bad. But there were some plays where it just seemed like he was holding the ball too long, and his pocket awareness was not where it usually is.
Yeah, there was some 21 stuff in there.
Yeah.
There was some, like, not feeling the pressure, getting happy feet, not making the right decision in terms of when to flee the pocket. But then, like, I think some of it's on the receivers too. I think back to that one of those early drives where he's trying to direct traffic and trying to get AJ to find some grass, and they were kind of bunched up in the same spot, and he didn't want to release the football. I think the scramble drill, it's really worked for this team in the last couple of years, and there are rules.
Like the OZ touchdown.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's a tool for this team because of Jalen's ability to extend plays, but that dried up in this game, and I'm not quite sure why. And
not just extend plays, but like throw the ball like across his body and like fading the wrong way and
the no yes.
Yeah, I mean, and when you're in a scramble drill, you have to be able to do that. That's one of the things that makes him so good at it. There's a science to scramble drill. Mm-hmm. It's not just and Brian Johnson talked about that. It's not just a bunch of guys running around trying to find. I mean, you have to stay away from, other guys and other receivers, and there's rules about how you cross over and everything. But that was surprising that kind of stuff, when you pass protect against that front as well as they did. You should be making more plays down the field.
You would hope so.
Yeah.
I mean, because you're doing the hardest part of it.
Right.
And some of that is like max protect, so they don't have as many bodies out there running routes, which, yeah, I get that. But you'd expect some of those receivers to win. I think not having Dallas Goedert in this game probably showed up there a little bit as well.
Yeah. And we're pretty much we pretty much think he'll be there for Dallas.
I'd be very surprised if he's not playing in Dallas.
I would agree.
Dallas and Dallas.
Right.
All right. Let's take a break. On the other side, we'll get to some special team stuff, some reasons for concern, and some reasons we think you shouldn't worry too much.
You deserve a car that thrills you, a car that puts goosebumps on your goosebumps. At Nissan, we got everything from turbocharged SUVs to 100% electric vehicles that'll make your heart beat faster. Experience the thrill for yourself and shop your local Nissan store at nissanusa.com today.
Celebrity cook Steve Martorano brings his Italian-American cooking back home to Philly. Enjoy Martorano's Prime at Rivers Casino and Steve's famous meatballs with Sunday gravy, prime steaks, and more. Make reservations at Martorano's Prime on Open Table. All right, we're back on the Eagle Eye Podcast presented by Nissan. We're out here at the Rivers Casino, Philadelphia, over by the sports book. Rube, Jalen Hurts no longer the favorite to win the NFL MVP. He's actually third, according to our partners at PointsBet. So you have Brock Purdy at plus 275, Dak Prescott plus 325, Jalen plus 400, Lamar Jackson plus 650.
Interesting. And that's fair. I mean, look, Dak's been really, really good. And it's kind of funny that the Eagles will play the two guys around Jalen back to back.
The last month, Dak's been great.
Incredible. A couple of guys who aren't going to get it and aren't in the top five probably, but I mean, Christian McCaffrey's on pace for, insane. He's having an insane year. I don't even know how many touchdowns does he have? Like 17 or something?
He is ninth.
He's ninth. And Tyreek Hill is on pace to catch like 140 passes for 2,100 yards. And I'll tell you what.
He's seventh.
What about C.J. Stroud?
He's eighth.
Is he? I'm a voter. Full disclosure. I'm not gonna even think about it until the season's over. But it seems like whoever's in the lead early, it's hard to break into that. It's hard to bust into that and like break up that group. But if I had to vote now, it would be Purdy.
Really?
It would be.
Man, I don't want to take anything away from Brock Purdy, but I don't see it when I watch him. I know he's good. He is a good player. He is more than just Kyle Shanahan on the field, which I feel like sometimes he gets overlooked unfairly, but I don't see an MVP when I watch him. And I know that's kind of I know I just said I don't want to dismiss him, but I'm kind of dismissing him a little bit. I don't think he's the most valuable part of that offense.
I do. And
because
he's not spectacular, right? So he's not he doesn't have a cannon arm. He doesn't run great.
Do you think they'd be better right now without Christian McCaffrey or Brock Purdy?
Well, I'm putting Christian McCaffrey in the mix. I think he's definitely a candidate. But
if you had to pluck one of them off the team right now, who hurts them more?
Who's their backup quarterback?
Sam Darnold.
They'd miss Purdy more. Who's their backup running back?
Well, not really a backup. He plays Mitchell.
Oh yeah. I don't know. I look at what he's done, and I don't want to hold it against him that he's got good weapons. I think the fact that he doesn't have that one elite skill like running for 500 yards or throwing the ball 70 yards. He just runs the offense and he runs it to perfection. I could certainly change my mind. There's a lot of football to be played, as they say. Who would you vote for? Would you be still Jalen?
No, right now it would be Dak.
Be Dak.
Right now. But I still think Jalen has a very good shot if he plays out this season.
Yeah, no, I do too. Mm-hmm. I do too. I think there's a recency bias. And look, they just played each other.
I think there's a very good chance whoever wins on Sunday, if one of these quarterbacks has a big game, we'll see them vault to the top of the odds.
Could be. And depending on what Purdy does. But, it's fun. It's fun to think about. And I think I vote for the top three. I think that's how it goes. So
okay. So it's like a point value?
Yeah. Yeah, so we'll see. But it's fun. It's fun to have a bunch of good young. I mean, Dak's not that young, but good to have some fun quarterbacks to talk about.
Yeah, especially in a year where so many have gotten hurt.
Yeah,
It's been a rough year for that.
that was awful last night.
Yeah, it sounds like it's not like a, it's funny because when he got hurt, and we're talking about Trevor Lawrence in that Jacksonville game, I didn't see it. I didn't see the step back on his ankle. So at first I was really worried because I thought it was a non-contact. Honestly, there was a bit of relief when I saw him get stepped on.
Yeah. When you see a player like smashing his helmet down and that kind of frustration, that's what it's like. He knows it's really bad.
Couldn't get him a cart.
Yeah. What was that about?
I don't know. He had to walk a long way.
Yeah, he did. Where was that? Game was in Jacksonville, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we know that concourse.
It's pretty far.
It is. Not concourse. Anyway.
I wanted to talk about special teams
Sure.
a little bit because I don't want to be unfair to Michael Clay. Because
We have nothing to ask him because there's no breakdowns.
they are just very good. They are a very good special teams unit. And last year, how many times did we come on this pod and say, man, that's the weak link. They're going to lose them a football game. This year, it's like,
And they lost him, helped lose him a pretty big one.
yeah, that I wouldn't put that all on Michael Clay, but it didn't help.
No, I wouldn't. I mean, yeah,
They've been great this year.
they have in every phase, really. I thought the first few weeks they gave us some long returns.
Mm-hmm.
They had some breakdowns, but
They'll have a big test this week with Turpin back
yeah,
there.
Turpin's a stud. But yeah, they've been really good. Coverage has been great. The kicker's been great. The punter has been lights out.
He got punted Mitch Wishnowski.
He did. He's got the highest average in Eagles history now. He just bumped Chaz Henry.
Did Chaz Henry have the highest average?
Well, he didn't have enough attempts, but he did have a higher average. Cam Johnson's kind of the all-time team record holder. He's like 2 yards ahead of him. He just doesn't have that many attempts. I think he's punted 30 times. But I've been really impressed with him. And
I'll be honest, when they first got him, I was like, I don't know.
Sure. But that's kind of an underrated Howie move. And so really, and I mean, coverage teams have been good. Who do you like watching on special teams?
Job.
He's really good.
Josh Job is excellent.
Yeah.
On special teams. Sidney Brown is fun to watch.
Yeah.
Because he flies. But Job has been the guy to me that's like really stood out on special teams.
Patrick Johnson making plays.
When he's up. Yeah, he had that big tackle.
Yeah. But I think Job is, I don't know if you had to pick an MVP on special teams, it'd probably be Jake, but Job has been really good. And you always wonder, like, I mean, he was the third.
Covey, I mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
Didn't have a return in the last game, but.
I thought he had one for no yards.
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't know that.
He got demolished.
Yeah, he did. He got clobbered after I wrote that he doesn't get clobbered anymore. But
honestly, it was a weird decision for him to return it.
Yeah. But you know, they've turned such a corner, and you don't like hold your breath when they're out there anymore, like you used to. And
that's what Nick should have said when he got questioned about 4th and 3. I got to get my best player out there.
Yeah, that would have been a good answer.
Yeah. No, it wouldn't.
For us, it would.
There was no good answer for that.
Yeah, but it's good. It's good to see. And look, I was vocal about Michael Clay. I said he should be fired, and I was wrong. And Nick did the right thing by keeping him.
Yeah, he did. Nick shows some patience. The organization in general shows pretty good patience with these things.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think that's Nick's nature.
Mm-hmm. But it also falls in line with franchise nature.
Probably, yeah.
They're not hiring and firing that quickly.
No, that's always a good thing to do.
Yeah, especially if you have competent people in place. If you don't, then
it's probably the
by
right
all
thing
means,
to do.
yeah. Give me one reason you're concerned about the Eagles right now, even though they're 10-2.
Well, I would say, look, I didn't expect great things from the secondary or the linebackers, but I expected more from the front, the defensive front, when it comes to pressuring the quarterback, because this back seven is not good enough to go out there and play against great players if the quarterback can just stand there and not get pressured. And the last 3 games, Eagles have 4 sacks. They had a stretch before that where they were getting pretty good pressure. Now, Mahomes and Josh Allen are 2 of the hardest guys to sack in the league. So, but again, if you have the best D line and the best pass rushers, you like that matchup. And they don't get sacked, but let's go get them a few times, and they haven't. And I think in 2 of the games, Reddick got a sack early, and then they didn't get another sack, or Fletch had the one, but the edge rushers didn't. So that worries me, because this defense is not good enough to function at a high level if they're not getting pressure.
Yeah, it's all predicated on that. You're right. And they've had spurts where they dominate, like we've seen late in games.
Yeah.
I also don't know if the rotation is as strong as I expected it to be. At edge, I mean, Brandon Graham's not playing very much. They're not getting many snaps out of Nolan Smith. Derek Barnett's gone. Obviously, he wanted a bigger role elsewhere, but like you lose a body that you can put out there, and they just don't have a ton of bodies right now. And honestly, interior too, like the Contavious Street trade was not one that I really even gave a second thought to when they made it, but then they've had some injuries and they've played all these snaps. And Moro Ojimo, who I thought was going to step into some sort of role, doesn't play. I mean, 1 snap against the 49ers.
And didn't play on special teams.
Yeah. So you have like a bunch of Fletcher, who didn't practice all week, playing a lot. You have Jalen Carter playing a lot. You have the snaps from Milton and Jordan Davis, but then like Marlon Tuipulotu is playing quite a bit.
Yeah, he played 11 snaps, I think. I worry about Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter, who are really the heart of that front. Played a lot of snaps.
Fletcher too. I thought that Fletcher played pretty well against 49ers.
I did too, but I don't worry about him as much just because he's been doing this so long. I think he really knows his body and what he can do, and he's played a ton of snaps in his career. And I mean, you think the younger guys, could handle it, but it's a different game than even the SEC. So I just worry about those 2 guys. They played a lot, and they haven't been quite as impactful of late.
Any interest in Ndamukong Suh?
Sure. Why not?
Give the snaps that are going to Marlon Tuipulotu to Ndamukong. I know they're not the same player, but I mean,
well, Lidval's somewhere, right? Where's he?
Linval's in Buffalo. We saw him a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. Well, in lieu of him, I mean, he can't hurt.
Mm-hmm.
This whole defense is going to be guys they brought in halfway through the season.
Like over 30.
Yeah, it's an old defense. They have four defensive backs in their 30s who've started games. The first time that's ever happened. Mm-hmm. And then Fletch is in his 30s. It's a concern.
Yeah. My biggest reason for concern is kind of what we just talked about. All these pieces they've brought in are at positions where communication is so key. And I know that Kevin Byard has been really vocal about wanting that communication, but I just wonder if they're going to have enough time to put it all together. You have one of your starting safeties, your starting nickel, and now potentially a starting linebacker all coming in midstream. I mean, that's so many moving pieces that I'm wondering how it all fits together. And it's December. You got to figure this out.
Yeah, and even none of these guys were. There's a reason they have OTAs. There's a reason they have the whole spring off-season program. And I mean, Zach Cunningham wasn't here for that either. I mean, he was here for the start of the season, but none of these guys played together last year, and I mean, it's a lot to expect them to just come in and have that chemistry and communication and cohesion right off the bat.
Give me one reason for optimism other than them being 10-2.
I'll say Jalen, just because he's done it at such a high level for since the middle of 21, and I don't think he's lost back-to-back games since early in 21. This team bounces back. He bounces back so well. He's got the highest winning percentage of any quarterback in history, other than Darryl LaMonica, I think, or somebody like that. But we're talking about the MVP candidates, and he's up in the top 3 easily, no matter how you rank him. Everything comes back to him. Even in the most miserable, awful, one-sided loss, he wasn't awful. It wasn't his best game, but I just have so much faith in him that he'll get the most out of what he can do and what the other guys can do on the field.
That's fair. I'll go with the offensive line. I still think that's the strength of this team. They're healthy now, knock on wood there, but I think they're the type of offensive line that you can just trust in every week to either protect or to start leaning into the run game a little bit more. And I have faith in Jeff Stoutland in the run game schematically, and I think they're going to figure that out.
Well, they better. Yeah, I mean, I think you're probably right, but yeah. And those two go hand in hand, Jalen and O-line.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if this team's going to achieve its goals this year, that's where it's going to start.
Yeah, and I think it's a little telling that both of our reasons for concern were on defense and our reasons for optimism are on offense.
I didn't even think of that, but
yeah,
you're right.
and I think that just kind of speaks to talent. You know, this whole thing has been built with offense first, and they have more talent on that side of the football. And down the stretch, that side of the ball might just have to carry them.
Yeah, I think that's safe guess.
Early thoughts on the Cowboys. We know this team so well. We'll break it down a little bit on Thursday, but they're playing really good football right now.
They are. They've won 14 straight at home, and they've averaged 36 points in those games and allowed 18. So since early last year, their last home loss was opening day last year to Tampa, 19-3. And since then, I mean, that was Brady. That's how long ago it was. But they're just crushing people right now.
Mostly inferior opponents, they're crushing.
True.
They had a tight game against Seattle, and Seattle could have won that.
Yeah, they probably should have won that.
Mm-hmm.
But they're scoring a lot of points. They're very confident right now on offense. They've got weapons. The history of this matchup, the Eagles haven't swept them since 2011 when Michael Vick was the quarterback. They haven't swept them many times. I think it's 6 times since 91. So they have a chance to do something they haven't done in a long time. They really need this one. I think it's going to be a great game. I think it's going to be a fun game. But Dallas at home, they just don't lose many games. Eagles are a very good road team as well. So it's going to be a fun matchup. You hope you get Goddard back. You expect to get Zach Cunningham back. So be closer to full strength as well.
Yeah, that'd be nice. That would certainly help.
Yeah.
Big matchup on Sunday. Really could go a long way in determining a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, division and yeah, certainly nobody's won the division back-to-back years since 03 and 04. Eagles won their third and fourth in a row. If they win this game, they can pretty much, they're not going to clinch anything, but
they could clinch a playoff berth this weekend.
Need some help.
Yeah, which isn't like they're going to be in the playoffs, but
yeah, if they win, like pretty much anything, like if the Rams lose, if the Packers lose, if the Vikings lose, if Seattle loses, there's like a lot of, but if they win, they're pretty much going to clinch a playoff spot.
Yeah. All right, big game on Sunday. We'll break it down more on Thursday. We want to remind everyone, if you haven't done it yet, please rate and subscribe the podcast wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, we love you guys too. Thanks for getting us to 100,000 subscribers on the NBC Sports Philadelphia YouTube page. Please click the like button. We get a bonus for that? I think so. Check your check for that one. Please click that like button, subscribe there as well. Any final words?
No, everybody have a great couple of days. We'll see you soon.
Yep, sounds good. Take care, everyone. And thanks to Rivers Casino Philadelphia for having us out here at the Sportsbook. For Rube, I'm Dave. This has been Eagle Eye presented by Nissan. We'll talk to you soon.